Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is on a 4-day official visit to the United States. He's planning to hold bilateral meetings with his US counterpart, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. Now, there's a long list of military deliverables from the United States, from GE F-404 jet engines, which power the indigenous light combat aircraft, MQ-9B Predator drones, co-production of the Stryker infantry vehicles, and the Javelin anti-tank guided missiles. Now, the US is one of India's biggest defense equipment suppliers. It supplied military equipment worth over $20 billion in the last 2 decades. India conducts the most number of military exercises with the US military, more than it does with any other country. And both countries have signed multiple agreements. They're partners in the Quad with Australia and Japan. But is the United States a reliable defense partner? Can Defence Minister Rajnath Singh's visit up the momentum in the India-US defense engagements? Joining me to discuss this are Dr. Swasti Rao, Associate Fellow from the MP-IDSA, Major General Ashwani Siwach, and in the studio with me is my colleague Deepak Bhadana. Welcome to the News9 Plus show. General Siwach, I want to start by asking you this. The India-US defense relationship hasn't looked better ever. It's like we are literally short of an ally of the United States. We've got most of what we wanted from the US. But, you know, there is that niggling doubt at the back of our mind, especially of our policymakers in the defense ministry. It was not so long ago that you had that Damocles sword of sanctions, which continues to hang on the Indo-US defense relationship even now, 20 years later. How much of an issue will the possibility of US sanctions on Indian defense deals, how much of an issue is it still in 2024?
Very correct. There's Sandeep, no doubt. See, as far as India and US relationship are concerned, in last 2 decades, irrespective of any party ruling India or in US, whether it is Democratic or Republican government, it has gone upswing. We have signed 4 basic agreements, that is COMCASA, Communication Compatibility and Security Agreement. Then we signed LIMIO, Logistic Exchange Memorandum of Agreement. And the last we signed was Basic Exchange Cooperation Agreement. It means as on today, the Americans are ready to give you state-of-art weapon system of critical technology. In the sense they earlier did not have that much faith in us, possibly thinking that if they pass some critical technology, it can be passed to Russian. But of late, it is seen that both these countries are become a strategic partner, and we are moving in that field. Now,
Absolutely,
what have we done correctly in these 20 years? You see, the point is that everyone looks after his national interest. As far as India is concerned, when we could not get a latest weapon system from US, we relied more on Russia. And we were taking almost 70% of our defense equipment from them. But we realized that the technology of Western power and the US is far, far superior than Russians. And the Russia itself has got a lot of economic problems. So we will like to take weapon system from US, provided it is ready to give 2 things. One is the latest technology, and second thing is that basically joint production or make in India. Now, considering the economy of India, the way India has now a 5th largest economy, a huge market, you find a lot of change which has taken place in US thought process, and they realize it that in case they have to rely upon any country in Indo-Pacific to counter China, it is India. And therefore, they have given us the weapon system which were no one else has got it in the South Asia, which I can only say C-17 Glowmaster, C-13J Hercules, then Apache attack helicopter, Chinook helicopter, which has been given. So, M777 ultralight Howitzer, and most of these weapons which have been given also being manufactured in India itself. Now, M777 ultra Howitzer, which is state of art, is being now manufactured by Mahindra Defense. So the question coming is, one, that they are ready to give you latest technology, critical technology, and second thing is they are ready to transfer this technology and make in India. Now, this has made a tremendous change, Sandeep.
Right, absolutely. And I'm going to ask Dr. Rao this question. Dr. Rao, you just heard a lot of defense hardware, General Siwach talking about M777s and C-17s, C-130s, and you have a whole laundry list of items that India has been operating of US origin. But the main thing is that none of these are actually made in India. They're not even assembled in India. They're all off-the-shelf purchases. And there doesn't seem to be anything in the pipeline either to suggest that there will be something like the impact of the BrahMos, for instance, that India makes with Russia. And one automatically goes to the Russian example because that's the only other big power that we've dealt with for several decades. What is it that the India-US defense partnership, what is that hurdle that they have to overcome before we can get to, say, the level of comfort that we enjoy with the Russian Federation?
Well, so I think there are ways to look at, at this question. It's a layered question. Of course, we all understand that. See, the first thing is that we all have to understand that time had been on the side of Indo-Russia relations when it came to defense. For sure, Russians enjoyed a kind of I would say, a monopoly, over the geopolitical circumstances that kind of shifted us, sort of pushed us with the Soviet Union in 1971 and thereafter. So you have to sort of give the right due attention to the fact that there was enough time. You also know that the DPSUs got into these. There was a lot of space to actually create that monopoly, which the Russians did actually.
Yes.
But now, I think with the geopolitical changes, with how the geopolitical situations have changed in the 2000s particularly, and with all the details that General Siwach also gave, I think the one thing that we need to remember is that when it comes to technology, when it comes to technological innovation or advancements, of course, the Russian weapons are no match for it. That's first. And one has to say it in a very objective manner. This has nothing to do with India's standalone relations with Russia or the kind of trust that we've built over the years. This has also got to do with basically technological, performances. So that's one, of course, that's one part. The other part, if you look carefully, Sandeep, is that India's new age defense cooperations or defense industry cooperations are also entwined deeply with a very strategically driven cooperation in national technology strategies. Okay.
Right.
So if you look at the US, on the one hand, you see in a very short time how the US has kind of emerged as this major player for India's defense. Not just procurement, but also exports, because there was a report yesterday that surfaced where Snehesh was discussing how more than 51% of India's defense exports are actually going to the US. So it's not just one way, it's both ways. And we would like to discuss it later. But coming back, so the emergence of the US is also supported by the ISET, which is steered at the NSA level. And I can give you a parallel with France, which is India's second biggest weapons, exporter, where a very robust defense industrial roadmap is again entwined with a 2019 signed cooperation on national technologies, critical and emerging technologies. And this was ratified in 2023. So the point that I'm trying to sort of focus on is that, yes, so far we do not have anything like the BrahMos, but remember the kind of time that went into actually putting together one BrahMos. So you have to sort of keep that in mind. Besides the competitiveness of the general defense ecosystem today, the involvement of the private sectors.
Yes.
Okay, and fourthly, this other parallel vertical, which is steered by the NSA level, in the case of the US for sure, which is this, cooperation on national technology and the critical and emerging technology. So these are the things that kind of give it that entire contour, okay, of how one should be looking at what is happening in India-US strategic dimension, especially when it comes to defense. Now, whether this is going to get better with time, yes, of course, I think this is going to get better with time, because the geopolitical and the geostrategic logic is that it is today in US's interest to have an empowered and a strong India in the Indo-Pacific, because there is no way under the sun that the US can actually support Ukraine, support Israel, look after what is happening in Taiwan, and then
Yes.
also look at the Indo-Pacific at large. So that it is in US's interest, and especially when these kind of convergences are driven by a national interest, then they are there for long.
Absolutely, and very, very important points, Dr. Rao. I'm going to come back to that issue of sanction-proofing our defense supplies from the United States. But first, I want to ask Deepak, my colleague here in the studio. Deepak, you've been tracking both the Russian-India military relationship and, of course, the US-India military relationship. And in a manner of speaking, both countries are at war. Russia literally is fighting a battle with Ukraine. And it's a proxy war with NATO. And the United States has its own issues with China and Taiwan in the South China Sea. So, and it's also supplying a lot of hardware to
Israel.
Ukraine and Israel. Yes.
Yeah.
And there are active conflict zones all across the world. And of course, you cannot emphasize the importance of Make in India enough. But given the fact that all these countries are at war, defense industry is back, the military industrial complex is back. What are the key challenges going to be really for us when we look at both the United States and Russia? Supplier number one and supplier number two.
The other day I read a very interesting comment on the internet wherein the poster stated that India has become the Switzerland of South Asia. We're friends with everyone, we supply everyone,
Right.
We mediate with everyone.
Yes.
And it's no doubt a byproduct of, the fine balance when it comes to foreign policy
Right.
that India has managed
Absolutely,
to...
but Deepak, I must quickly interrupt you here. Switzerland does not have Pakistan and China as its neighbors, friendly neighbors.
No, it's not in South Asia. You see.
Yeah, and it's not in South Asia.
But there are some things to look at from
Yes.
Mr. Rajnath Singh's visit over there. Two key agreements that have been signed.
Yes.
The first one being the security of supply arrangements.
Right.
Now, this is simply a commitment between India and the US that they will come to each other's aid when it
Right.
comes to supply of defense materials.
Yes.
And to an extent, that has already been happening.
Yes.
How has US become the number one importer of? That is because India is supplying a load of 155 shells.
Yes.
Right. Then there is the second one, which is called the DPAS. This is the Defense Priority and Supply System.
Yes.
Right. This is more of a mechanism wherein, say, the industries from both countries, they coordinate with each other and they anticipate upcoming demands.
Right.
But there is a critical point when it comes to SOSA, the first agreement, that is that it's non-binding.
Yes.
So the sanction proofing is yet to be done.
Sanction proving yet to be done, and that's a question that I'm going to ask Dr. Rao this. But before that, General Siwach, how do you sanction proof the India-US defense relationship? How much ever we talk about this, whatever agreements we sign, there's nothing that can save you from the US Congress, literally. There is no act there is nothing that is supreme over the US Congress. What can India really do in a situation like this to ensure that we have a steady supply of spares for our existing warships, our aircraft, spy planes and the like?
Sandeep, there are 2-3 ways of looking at it. Now, first of all, you have to see the track record of US. It is not only dealing with India, it is dealing with number of Middle East countries, also
Yes.
providing a lot of military hardware to the NATO countries. National interest of each country is taken care of. Now, considering that our interests are matching now and will likely to match in future, considering what is happening in Indo-Pacific and Indian Ocean and the way China is trying to come up and trying to put pressure on Indo-Pacific against Southeastern nations, also against Taiwan.
Yes.
I feel we should not be hyper sensitive on that. Now,
Right.
let's see it. We are taking which all weapons on the pipeline, and have they been delivered or there is a delay? Now, as far as this engine G404 is concerned,
Yes.
which we want to put it on basically Tejas Mark-1 and 1 Alpha. That has been delayed, no doubt about it. The General Electrical is the one which is manufacturing that. This
Yes.
will be jointly produced by India and HAL in time to come, not now. Of the shelf we are getting, and they are trying to give us almost 7 to 8% indigenous. We want almost about 20%. The question comes is that there may be delay, but delay are due to many other reasons.
Yes.
The sanction, I don't think they are going to be put. Any sanction which is going to be put will impact both sides.
Yes.
After all, why this war, Russia-Ukraine war, is continuing. It is the industrial military complex of US which is thriving. So
Yes.
therefore, the point is we should not be hypersensitive that. Second thing which I tell you, MQ-9 drones. Now,
Right.
MQ-9 drones are going to be 31, which is a mega project, $3.9 billion, which
Yes.
we are taking 15 for the Navy and 8 each for Army Air Force. And that again, Bharat Forge will be doing this understanding that in time to come, General Atomics and Bharat Forge can manufacture together. All these things will not happen over a period of time. It will take a long time.
Right.
But my only point is we are very careful in going along with US, knowing their track record, also see what they dealing with other countries. I suppose there is no choice neither between India nor with US. We have to coordinate and cooperate, and we must understand that you are not going to get the same deal now from Russia.
Yes.
Russia economy is not going to remain same as it was earlier. Russia dependence on China will increase.
Absolutely.
Russia technology is not what it used to be. So you have no choice but to depend upon the Western country, whether it is France or whether
Yes.
US.
Yes,
Now, in the
General
other
Siwach.
two pipelines,
Yes.
Sandeep, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Another which is on the pipeline is basically you see this infantry combat vehicle,
Yeah.
the Striker, which again some agreement will come when Rajnath Singh will meet Austin Lloyd. And also basically what we are trying to take is another weapon system, which is a anti-tank gun missile. That
Yeah.
is Javelin missile, which
Yes.
is again a very potent weapon. So I suppose we must take it positively and
Right.
have an understanding, have some close, but US is not going to ditch you what it has ditched earlier.
Yes.
Because US needs us, we need US.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask that to Dr. Rao. You know, this point that you raised earlier, Dr. Rao, the fact that the US is one of India's largest export destinations for military equipment. That was brought out in the print and earlier by the Defence Ministry as well. The fact that nearly 50% of Indian defence exports go to the United States. You know, could this military-industrial complex to military-industrial complex, these interdependencies, could they ensure some kind of sanction proofing of military hardware on both sides? Given the fact that you get enough time, you know, give it some time, say 10, 15 years. It's not going to happen in months. It'll take years.
Yeah, so I mean, just considering the fact that we actually started, like for all practical purposes, we started around 2016, right?
Yes.
You know, India-US defense relations, and in that regard, you see that less than 10 years we are where we are. So this is nothing short of miraculous. That's one. Of course, there's geopolitics which is pushing it, and then you mentioned the interlinkages. Well, of course, one of the ways in which you also build reliability is by building these interlinkages. So there is the interlinkages logic out there, which kind of builds reliability, and reliability builds it back. So you have that. Just the other thing about the US and sanction proofing, I think there's also this little need to redefine what we mean by sanction proofing. India, so far, I'm not even able to recall when was the last time when India was actually sanctioned by the US for a defense deal. I think was it in the 1960s somewhere, if I'm not wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So what I'm saying is that do we have a precedent? Do we have a precedent where SOSAs, and the US has it with a lot of partners in the world? General Siwach was also mentioning there's a list actually. When you go to the DoD website, you can actually see that long list of all the Western partners with whom it has. I think when it comes to sanctions, there has been so much narrative building around the S-400 purchases, for example. And US actually sanctioned Turkey, which is a NATO member, but never sanctioned India. And even in 2022, if you remember, there was this massive narrative again of, whether the US is going to sanction. So what I'm trying to say is that perhaps the sanction proofing understanding needs to sort of, reworked a little bit, keep in mind the geopolitical realities of our times, because by themselves, in an absolute sense, they don't really mean anything. Okay. And ultimately, if you look at it from the US's perspective, I will perhaps understand why they would want to keep this stick on, because come on, I mean, look at it, look at something from India's perspective. When we talk to the Europeans, for example, or other Western powers to come and invest in India, India.
Yes.
One of the things that they always complain about is that we don't get investment guarantees, but at the same time, we tell them to come and invest and have trust in the Indian system, isn't it? So I think that walking that extra mile will build that reliability. And we have started young, we have a long way to go. So I think we should not be prejudgmental and we should not suffer from preconceived notions. But at the same time, my suggestion would be to always have the cautious cap on, which is that yes, let's be cautious. Let's not just sort of be blinded with this. But yes, I think this is in India's national interest, and that's what matters.
It's in India's national interest indeed. And Dr. Rao, I was actually referring to the post-Pokhran era when you had not US hardware, but foreign equipment from the UK, which had US components, and we couldn't access those because of the sanctions. So indirect sanctions in a sense, because we didn't have any US origin equipment then. But now, of course, the game has changed considerably, and one can only hope, Deepak, that our mutual loathing of China, both the United States and India, drives us into a partnership where both countries can opt out of, and they have no option but to stay for the long course, as Dr. Rao mentioned, that we need to put our cap of caution on while we approach this defense relationship with the United States, it is phenomenal what we have seen since 2016. In less than a decade, the India-US defense relationship has been transformed. The kind of technologies that we talk, the agreements that we've been talking. Of course, that Damocles sword of sanctions always remains, but that's a discussion for another day. Thank you very much, General Siwach, Dr. Rao, and my colleague Deepak Bhadana for joining us as we track the India-US defense relationship while Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is in the United States.